While the United States Supreme Court may be bending over backwards to help the Trump administration with its depraved immigration policies, jerking and yanking people in and out of status, trying to deport them and remove them from this country despite having valid, appropriate immigration status, temporary as it may be. But federal judges are standing in their way. And we have a new ruling by a federal judge up in Massachusetts, Indira Talwani. She has ruled that over 500,000 Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelans, known as the CHNV group, who had their parole, which is not what it sounds like, but had their temporary status to stay in this country immediately revoked by Kristi Noem to throw them out of the country by the end of April. Not so fast, says Judge Talwani. You're staying here because I think the actions of Kristi Noem is based on an improper interpretation of the statute related to this CHNV program, and she shouldn't be allowed to just yank people away from what they have built a life to try to stay in America, to try to find an alternate status just because she wants to please her king, Donald Trump. Now let's talk about the ruling, which happened on Thursday, is going to keep these people in place, subject to an appeal. It'll go up to the First Circuit Court of Appeals. I'm sure some sort of emergency application of Donald Trump's creation will then be lobbed at the United States Supreme Court. In this particular matter, there are many ways for people to stay in this country with temporary status. We've heard a lot about temporary protective status, TPS. There's also a separate program that was geared specifically for the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan communities. I know those communities well, having lived in Miami for a long time. A very proud group of people, supported by and large by hardworking, tax-paying, voting U.S. citizens or green card holders. In fact, all of these people that I'm talking about, these 532,000 people, all through an app, had financial sponsorship in this country, had jobs lined up, and were able to take advantage of this program. They didn't do anything wrong. They uprooted themselves. They left the countries, many of them war-torn, many of them natural disaster-torn, many of them run in a way that it does not allow for a dignified life, or they're in harm's way in their particular countries. Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. And what Judge Talwani said in response to the lawyers, the hearing was these hearings are very, very interesting. Because what you have is on one side, the Department of Justice not being truthful, not being honest, and frankly, not being accepted at face value by federal judges. They just can't. When you have a Department of Justice whose leadership, including Todd Blanche, former criminal defense lawyer for Donald Trump, including Pam Bondi, a former impeachment lawyer for Donald Trump, are instructing whoever is left in the remnants of the Department of Justice, having shown the door to a lot of professional career Department of Justice lawyers and other staff. The people that are left are being beaten to within an inch of their life emotionally. They're being told you can't join the American Bar Association. You have to lie to federal judges or we're going to fire you. You have to follow the whims and the demands of Pam Bondi / Donald Trump as the highest law enforcement officer. And if you don't like it, there's the door. And people are heading for the door. Professional people that were serving the American people and the American public day to day, independently, in a nonpartisan way. They've gutted the Office of Solicitor General that argues cases at the United States Supreme Court. There's no one left there of any value that's respected by the United States Supreme Court. Same thing at the Department of Justice. When you have Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyers running the show, that makes other people feel uncomfortable at the Department of Justice. So the impact of that is that when these lawyers go into court, they're not given the benefit of the doubt. Their arguments are being looked at through a jaundiced lens by judges. It's almost like you can hear them saying, a thought bubble over the judge's head is, I don't believe you. Now, that's a terrible place. Having been a trial lawyer for 35 years, it's a terrible place for an advocate to be. You know, when I go into a courtroom because of my reputation for success and my reputation for being honest and truthful, although zealous in my advocacy for a client, a judge can trust me. If I say a case stands for a certain proposition, it stands for that proposition. If I say there's a case on point and I cite to it, they can rely on that. If I say there's no case on point, they can rely on that. If I have to distinguish a case or a fact, they know they can trust me. At the end of the day, they may not rule for me, but I come in there with tremendous amount of credibility from the opening bell. Department of Justice has been completely undermined by its leadership, who's made them not independent judicial court officers at all. So when in the debate between Judge Talwani in Massachusetts yesterday and the Department of Justice lawyer, she just didn't believe him. He said, well, we're not going to put them front and center in deportation by taking away their status. They could still, she's trying to argue against an injunction to keep them in this country because he doesn't want to go back to tell his boss, Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi, that he lost. Judge says, I don't believe you. I mean, if you take away their status and they run a check on them through sanctuary city or state or not, and they come up with a broken taillight, or they have to go to the hospital and their name is run in a database, they don't have status, they can be picked up and deported. You can't guarantee to me that they can't. She said, look, there was a deal. There was a deal made through a statute that people relied on. And you're just giving them a choice to either flee everything that they've built or remain in this country and be incarcerated. And I don't think that's a fair deal. At the end of the day, in order to revoke the status, this is we are supposed to have a dignified immigration policy. We don't. Certainly in the hands of Donald Trump. And in that dignified policy, we will give you status. Could be temporary, could be permanent. There's all different ways to come into this country legally. So now we're penalizing people for coming into this country legally. Think about that. I thought the Trump administration was all about getting rid of the 11 million undocumented. Why are they going after the over 1 million people that had temporary protective status legally here to try to find another path to citizenship or green card status? Or people like the already abused Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan community? They're here with financial sponsors. They're paying their taxes. They're working hard. They're trying to build a life to get to the next rung. They're trying to grab the next brass ring on the immigration system to move up and stay in this country. Why are we targeting the documented? I thought we were supposed to go after the undocumented. Well, not when you have people like just to show you the scope of this, Alina Habba, remember her? Who got kicked upstairs, failed up, as we say, and has become the acting interim U.S. attorney for New Jersey in order to go after people like the governor of New Jersey. She had this to say on a recent clip about going after sanctuary states and going after people like Murphy. So they love separation of powers. They love federalism, except when they're going after the states for doing what they believe is right. Listen to her language here.
We know that the governor has on his website currently do's and don'ts for his local state of law enforcement. Those do's and don'ts instruct them not to cooperate with illegal immigrants who have administrative warrants that have been issued by the court after due process saying that they are no longer welcome here. They have gone through the court system. They are to be deported. It is instructing them to go against our federal rules, our executive orders. And I am unfortunately going to announce on your show tonight, Sean, and I want it to be a warning for everybody, that I have instructed my office today to open an investigation into Governor Murphy, to open an investigation into Attorney General Platkin, who has also instructed the state police not to assist any of our federal, and they list our federal agencies that are under my direction, the FBI, the DEA, all these individuals that are trying to clean up our streets in New Jersey, not to cooperate. That will no longer stand. Pam Bondi has made it clear, and so has our president, that we are to take all violent criminals and criminals out of this country and to completely enforce federal law. And anybody who does get in that way, in the way of what we are doing, which is not political, it is simply against crime, will be charged in the state of New Jersey for obstruction, for concealment, and I will come after them hard. Those investigations will start immediately.
It's like she just woke up and discovered due process was required. Because she gave that speech that political screed on her interview right after the United States Supreme Court ruled against the Trump administration and found they have to give due process and notice, and they've got to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia, who was sent illegally to El Salvador. But she sums up all that is corrupt and wrong and depraved within the executive branch, and this is why federal judges will not and cannot trust them. So Talwani said, you made a deal. These people relied on the deal, i.e. the statute. They're documented. They have temporary status. They're not hurting anybody. They're here with financial support, and you're throwing them out on a moment's notice without real notice, 532,000 people? I don't think so. That is the very definition of not a reasoned decision, which is required under the statute. Now, Noam tried to announce, well, we're just getting rid of the temporary people who were here on temporary status because the rationale for it no longer exists. Why? I don't understand. The rationale for it was a humanitarian, dignified pathway for people that we wanted in this country ultimately. The lifeblood of this country is immigration, and it has been since our founding days. Our founding fathers were immigrants. And so since then, in order to water the tree of liberty, so to speak, we need people to come to this country with a desire and be treated dignified in a dignified manner and work hard for the American dream and replace the next generation as they age out, so to speak. We need that. We need their brain power. We need their loyalty. We need their patriotism. We need their ethnic diversity contribution to our not a melting pot anymore, our fruit salad that makes up America. Those are all bad words to the Trump administration, busy attacking law firms who now have to change and scrub their websites to get rid of references to DEI. God forbid they're attacked by the Trump administration. So we're going to continue to follow this case in Massachusetts as it wends its way up to the First Circuit and to the United States Supreme Court, who hasn't yet started to rule about the temporary protective status, the documented people at the United States Supreme Court level. But they're starting to. We got two rulings that we're following and how they're going to play out at the United States Supreme Court, right back to back. One, Donald Trump can use for now the Alien Enemies Act, but people have to be given notice and due process, at least through an immigration process. That's one. And two, people like Abrego Garcia have to get notice and due process and have to be brought back for the dank prisons of El Salvador because that's against our Constitution. Let's see how those map onto rulings like from Judge Talwani, keeping these 500,000 group of Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans in the country. I'll continue to follow it right here on Legal AF. Hit the free subscribe button. You're going to love our contributors. We got almost a dozen of them at the intersection of law and politics. Until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touches Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event, by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. the Popok firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.